Welcome to Sunrise Extra. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about death.
Don't mind me, I'm just taking the test right now.
Taking a test. Okay, here's where you're seeing the little thing that you clicked on. Morbid curiosity. There's a new test out there called the Morbid Curiosity Scale. And there was a quiz you take. Chris is doing it right now. It's, I don't know, probably 30 questions or so.
Yeah, it takes you about 3 minutes.
And it's, interestingly enough, this is by a guy who went to college with one of our producers, and he's getting his PhD in morbid curiosity.
And she didn't pitch the idea.
No.
This was Nina's idea, and Jess says, wait a minute. That
I know this guy,
the person
yeah.
who created that test went to school with me.
So our sister show, Daily Blast Live, that you can see on KGW at 11, 2 p.m., they did this topic yesterday, and I thought it was really interesting. So Squid Game is the biggest show Netflix has ever had. It's on right now. It premiered, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. And everyone is binge watching it. I have not started watching it because I feel like it's could be too demented and it's going to scar my mind. So I haven't watched it. But it's kind of talking about, why we like watching this stuff and all these documentaries on murderers and, these true crime podcasts and everything that we're kind of all obsessed with. Plus, it's Halloween. And they actually say morbid curiosity can help you deal with anxiety and fear a little healthier. And so this test asks you questions like, if you could watch a head transplant, would you want to?
Yeah.
Strongly disagree, somewhat disagree, blah, blah, blah. Amputations or autopsies, how interested in that? The paranormal, how interested in that are you? Or like a Ouija board. Also, would you want to watch someone's head being cut off in the medieval ages? Like, would you sit and watch that on a scale of 1 to 6?
Would you want to go to a gladiator match back in the day and watch the gladiators literally fight to the death? That was the toughest. I think there's a total of 4 categories, and that's sort of like the violent one was a tough one for me because like one of the questions said if a street fight broke out and you knew you could not help, you could only watch, would you stand there and watch? And I, honestly,
What'd you say?
I would watch a fight. If a fight were to break out, I'd be curious to see what would happen in this fight. So I would not turn away. But I also said to you that, I don't like to see people just get like really grotesquely injured either. So even like on watching MMA, like, oh yeah, I want to see the MMA fight. But if someone like breaks their leg awfully in that fight and it's like one of those nasty like snap breaks, I don't like to watch that. I don't take any pleasure in seeing the replay of that. I do like watching Chris work hard on his test.
Well, I accidentally skipped over part of it, and yeah, so now I'm trying to make sure I get my,
your averages.
So you came up above average.
Yeah, because I had, on those questions, I did have to answer high. Like I did say, yes, I strongly agree. I would want to watch that street fight, even though I would feel bad if someone were to, die during that fight.
I'm curious what a battle would feel like in the Middle Ages.
Have watched it.
Yeah.
Probably really bloody.
I don't like watching like the Saw movies or gross, mutilation, stuff like that. No.
But I do like this.
But I am interested in like the after,
You're watching The Karate Kid, right? And I do not like to watch the scene where Daniel LaRusso is getting beat up, and then Mr. Miyagi has to come and save him from those punks that are beating him up. And he's taking shots to the stomach. They're kicking him in the face.
I like watching Mr. Miyagi beat up.
But when Mr. Miyagi comes on the screen and starts like getting his revenge, he can do anything he wants to those punks. I'm like all for it. Like I enjoy watching that.
So it has to be a bad guy.
Yes.
Okay.
And if we knew of like a mass murderer, someone who did like the most heinous crimes you could think of to children. I mean, think of the worst crime. If we caught that person, and I would have no problem watching them be put to death in whatever way someone came up with.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just me. That's just me and my morbid.
So here's a question for you, being in the news business. So when I worked down in Sacramento, it was before California had enacted the moratorium on the death penalty.
Yes.
And so no one has been executed in California since, what year would that have been? 2006 or 7. Each TV station could, which is messed up, but you could send a reporter to San Quentin and have your background checked and all that to sit in the viewing room for executions, for lethal injections. And how old would I have been? I don't know, 26. I signed up I was like, well, this is a once in a lifetime. This is a once in a lifetime experience.
Once in a lifetime for that individual.
So
as
I
well.
was next on the list. I had a friend who went before me and witnessed it. And you're not in the same room as the family. And I think you're even watching it on a screen, maybe. But you're in the prison. And so I was like, you know, other people were like, it's, you know, it's very interesting. It'll give you a perspective as a reporter.
Okay.
Other people said, don't do it. That is a brain tattoo that you don't want for the rest of your life. And so I was like, well, I'll put my name on the list and we'll see. So I was like next up for the next execution, and they were happening like fairly frequently-ish.
Yeah.
And then all of this legislation came down and, you know, I didn't go. But now I'm wondering, like, would that have totally messed me up?
I don't know if it would have messed you
and
up.
then you
but it
see the
would've left its mark.
reactions, you know, of the people around you. And I mean, it's not, you know, someone's head getting cut off, but it's someone dying.
Yeah. You know, I'm also, it pains me to ever think about someone who's like falsely accused of spending any time in prison that they don't deserve to spend, or you know, worst case scenario, being executed for a crime they didn't commit. I mean, that to me is like the
We hear
worst.
that all the time too.
These were violent, horrible murder people.
But I would literally enjoy watching the death of someone who I knew, like without no
Deserved
question,
it.
was caught in the act of doing something terrible.
Yeah, I just worried about, like, would you have dreams afterwards, and like, what is the of your personal, you know, effects of
Who
that?
knows what sticks in there?
Yeah.
And what washes off?
But like, I don't want to watch Squid Game.
I
It just
saw
seems
parts of it. It's not even that good. I mean, it just as
Is it
far as
gross?
entertainment goes, there's a lot of, you know, I would call it.
What's
like,
the premise? I've heard of it, but I have no idea what it's about.
It's like you can erase your debt if you go through these almost like Hunger Games type
Yes,
thing
that's a
against
good way
other
to
people who
explain
are trying to erase their debt, and the people are literally
so it's
getting
a competitive
killed.
thing where you're
Where death is
imminent to
imminent,
somebody.
yes.
Okay.
I didn't see the first episode. My kids started watching it, which, you know, having seen some of the episodes, I realized I'm a terrible parent probably for allowing them to continue watching it.
They're
They don't
teenagers.
seem to be affected by that sort of thing at all. But anyways, the idea, though, is that I don't think the people that got involved in the game at first knew that they would die if they didn't win. Like,
Yeah.
that death was a possibility.
Yeah, if you're not winning, you're dying.
Yeah.
Or you're getting killed.
But then
in
they
this
do
game.
find out that that's a possibility, and they're okay with staying in the game because the prize money at the end is so over the top in the millions that they say, well, you know what, my
See,
life isn't that great, so
it's messed up.
maybe it's worth trying this out. It's a little messed up.
That's
Can
why
you use
I
all that
stopped-
money on therapy afterwards?
And it's all lip synced,
Yes.
you know that, right? It's all
It's a
lip-synced.
Korean show. Yeah, it's a Korean made show. But
it's dubbed
that's
up.
why I stopped watching. I used to watch all those Real Housewives of Phil and the Beverly Hills in New York and all that garbage. And my husband, you know, as all husbands are, or just roll their eyes. I'm like, well, you go watch your sports. I'm going to watch this soap opera crap. But it is it, and I stopped watching it because it is just you're watching. It's voyeurism at other people's expense of like they're fighting, they're throwing tables. I mean, it's not. It's terrible behavior.
But you
and
know
you're
it's not
watching
real
it,
at
and
this
it
point.
Gets, I know, but
You
it
know
gets in
that
your mind.
some of that's- yeah.
And then you start acting how you are always seeing people almost. It's just not a good. You know what I mean?
Really?
I mean,
what
I'm
are the
not throwing
instances where
table.
you've
I'm just
acted like
saying, like,
throwing a
it
table at
affects
somebody?
you. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure, okay.
Yeah, just seeing people be terrible
You
to
are
each
what you
other
watch. You
for
are what
hours.
you eat. You are what you
Exactly.
practice. Okay,
Exactly.
fair enough.
We have some actually very interesting comments.
Ooh, okay, good. Oh, I see Willie Huey's. What do you say?
Willie, well, now let's save Willie's.
Okay.
We will read yours, Willie Huey, but I thought this one from Kristen Lebensky was interesting. Kristen always chimes in on the show.
Okay.
It's like a cliffhanger here, Kristen. She says, morbid curiosity led me to see something back in 2004 that I can never unsee. I have serious PTSD from it. I learned my lesson.
Well, of
She
course,
doesn't
now
tell
we
us-
want to know
Yes.
what it is, Kristen, but I understand. Don't, if, you know.
Well, if it's sitting there, and, you know, embedded in the
Drew
top
really
of your
wants to
mind.
know.
I'll second that. I mean, I saw a bad accident, and
Yeah.
it still sits with me. And the moments around that, it still, you know.
And just
yeah,
because you happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time, so to speak.
I was out. I won't even say what it was.
Were
but
you
I
working or
was
not
was
working?
running.
Okay.
I was
Oh,
running. I was
okay.
out on a run, and I came up to a traffic accident scene.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to
Yeah,
say.
see,
And
it is.
Can I say one? Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
I apologize. How like you arrived?
How
within
much did I see?
No, you arrived within seconds of the accident, minutes, or what do you?
within 30 seconds,
Okay.
because I just happened to be running by.
All right.
Yeah.
My gosh. I will tell you, one of the most unsettling feelings I've ever had was I was driving down a dark road. I was back in Western Pennsylvania working in Johnstown, PA at the time, and I'm coming home from the station. I took this little back road that winded down from like the upper level of this little
Laurel Highlands
to the bottom.
Yeah.
And as I'm coming down, I did not see this cat sitting on this dark road, and it was just sitting there, right? And as I turned around, like I'm coming down, and I had no time to brake safely. And I couldn't believe, like, my eyes when I saw its eyes, like, staring what I thought were, like, on my windshield. But it was, like, you know, a few feet in front of my car. But I couldn't, like, and if I went out of the way, I'm going off the
road.
side.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, and I just, like, braced. I remember grabbing that steering wheel, like, I could have put my hands through it, like, oh, like, I'm thinking, please go between the tires.
Yeah.
Like, and then I felt, like, the...
Yeah.
Like twice. And I'm like, oh, and I just, like, literally screamed out loud in the car by myself. I'm like, ah! Oh, it's just terrible.
I got when I ran over a
animal
squirrel.
stuff because it's just
So
like they're
nothing,
so, you know, innocent, and they, you know,
Yeah.
they're just victims of all of our crap.
That just left a
animal
terrible
stuff
feeling in me
bothers
for
me,
a long
yes.
time.
Yeah.
It also, I mean, like your story, you didn't know that person. I was going to say, like, you know, if you know a person, like Willie Huey, you were saying, I found my neighbor dead in his house. I think about that moment at least once a day. I can remember the smell, the sounds, the music, the dryness. I can't escape it.
Wow.
Or erase it.
What about the profile of those that do have to, as a job, have to be part of this? I guess
It
maybe
becomes
that's
as a
part of
job.
like this test that helps determine whether or not that's part of your aptitude to go and do that as a career. Maybe I don't know. We were talking about this before. Like maybe you need to have a morbid curiosity of certain things to be a brain surgeon or a surgeon of any kind, right? I mean, you're cutting into flesh and. Yeah.
Well, I think you're like, it's kind of what, like my husband's told me, being a paramedic and firefighter for, you know, years, is you just go into work mode and you're like, what do I do next and what do I have to get next, and medicines and all kinds of stuff, because he's, you know, they see gnarly stuff of horrible car crashes and all kinds. And oh gosh, when we first started dating, I just was fascinated by it. I'm like, tell me what you guys
So you're
did
making
last
him
night.
relive his day, like, tell me about.
He kind of enjoyed telling me about it, but I would, you know, he'd be like, dude, we went on a gnarly call, you know, of some kind of death. I'd be like, tell me everything, what happened. And I'll be like, oh my God, gross, tell me more.
Yep.
And it is,
like, I can't
like,
watch.
I don't want to see people hurt. I don't like that. And in this, if you take this quiz, there is a section on violence, but then there's a section of like autopsy. I think it would be, you saw a back surgery, you said, that was actually really interesting.
Yeah.
When I had surgery on my
creepy.
pinky, they just put my arm to sleep, but they were like, do you want us to put you to sleep? I'm like, no, I'm fine with it. And so I'm on there on the table, and they kind of gave me like anxiety medicine, but he had my whole like hand splayed open, and he was like, do you want to see your nerves? And I was like, yeah. Oh. And so he like puts this little thing under my nerve and kind of lifts it up. He's like, this is what it is. And I was like, whoa, cool. And so that kind of stuff is, interests me. I don't know.
What do you, like, I'm always thinking, like, I hope my boys are as healthy-minded as possible, right? I always use that term, like, you know, I'm not healthy-minded in many ways, and I want my boys to be as healthy-minded as possible. So what is like the more healthy-minded child? Is it the child that goes through the haunted house during Halloween season and is like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, look at all that blood. Oh, those guts are awesome. This is fantastic. Like, is actually like enjoying the gruesomeness of it all? Or is it the child who walks through like, I can't look, I can't see this, please take me out of here, I don't want to be in here? Like, who is the more healthy-minded, or are they both sort of?
I don't think you could make an actual definitive statement.
You know what I mean? Like,
on
I just
that.
don't know for my own kids. I'm like, which one do I want them to be? Do I want them to be okay with this, or I don't want them to be afraid of it? But I don't want them to be like so into the blood.
Well, I think it would be normal to be afraid of it. I mean, just this, you know, the scare part of it.
They're definitely more into it.
Yeah.
They're not afraid
But
of it.
there's a lot, I don't know.
We have a neighbor.
Because you know it's not real.
I think so. I always go there. I tell myself they are smart enough to realize that this is make-believe and not for real, and that's why they're okay with it.
Right.
Which is how you should be, I think, with those haunted houses.
Yeah.
Apparently, my wife went with a neighbor. So our two boys, my wife, our neighbor, and her son, they all went to the haunted house out at Clackamas County Fairgrounds last weekend. And she says that my neighbor I will not call her out by name.
What?
This woman was so afraid. My wife's like, I knew she was afraid of these places, but not to this level. She bought the candle that you can purchase so like the people will stay away from you as you walk through it.
Oh, there's I didn't
You
know
can purchase
that.
a candle,
Oh, I would
and like
totally
the ghosts
do
and
that.
goblins will stay away
This
from
is
you.
base.
My kids
I'm
were
on
saying,
base.
Mom,
Can't
tell
touch
Christy
me."
not to be near us with that candle. Like they wanted the full experience. But my wife said she was like holding on to her, had her eyes covered the whole time, was like literally trembling, and she goes, it was like a real fear. Like it was fear, as you can, as you could ever imagine it.
And maybe there's some PTSD or something.
Right.
Who
It
knows?
gets in
right?
your
'Cause it
head of
plays
like
on,
someone's going to jump out at you, and like I don't like going to haunted house. I mean, it's obviously all pretend.
And you'll pass that down to your
fun.
daughter, whether you try to or
Yeah,
not,
like,
right? I mean,
I
she
don't
grew
wanna
up
do it.
fearing those haunted houses as well.
We are getting a lot of really good comments, you guys. Let's see. Shauna Kyler says, I worked in the lab for over 18 years. I've seen a lot and not much bothers me. When it comes to the elderly or animals, though, you have to have a certain type of personality to be able to handle it. Yes, Kristen Levensky says, I think there's a huge difference between medical settings and violence. I can deal with blood and surgery videos, but real life violent deaths are totally different. Christy Shirk, I've done hair in a mortuary. I always feel it's the last thing I can do for them. Heather Walsh, she watched her whole hand surgery too. I love that. Shauna says, I have to disconnect from feelings and emotions. Once that's done, you can go into work mode. You have to have a certain personality to be able to do some things. The things I've done in the lab would horrify most people. Do tell.
Yeah, give us one example, please. That's our morbid curiosity
We're gonna need
speaking.
Toxicology for the Oregon State Medical Examiner.
Ooh.
One of my favorite jobs in the lab over the years. Toxicology. So you're taking blood and stuff from people?
Did you see Renee Robertson's comment?
No.
I don't know if you just jumped right over that one. Renee, who chimes in quite often, thank you, Renee. She says, I once had hip replacement surgery. I asked my doctor to take pictures of the surgery. He did, and I have a picture of him holding my hip ball in his arms.
No. That's pretty cool.
Like,
That's trippy.
tell us, is the doctor smiling next to your hip ball?
And he's going like, ah!
Yeah, did you
Was he like, oh, I like a leg?
My gosh.
That's pretty funny.
Willie, going back to Willie's comment, like usually he's throwing zingers our way during Sunrise Action. That is the most serious and darkest and deepest comment Willie's ever posted about finding his neighbor dead in the house next door one day.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Willie Huey.
But I remember when I was an intern in Eugene at KEZI, I saw my first fatal crash, and we got there before they had put up crime tape or anything, and so you saw the body on the road, and as a 20-year-old or something, I still remember it, the raining and dark, and it's very sad, and it does stick with you.
Knock on wood. I'm 47 years old, and I've never seen, I don't even want to say it out loud, what I've not seen.
Dead body?
I've not seen, someone die. I've never been in the room with anyone, even as, a lot of kids see sometimes their grandparents pass.
Oh, you mean like witness the moment?
Yeah, a moment of someone leaves the earth and goes on to the next life.
Yeah.
I've never actually witnessed that in good, bad, or in different ways. So I'm grateful for that, actually. And I was alive when my grandparents all passed away, and I just wasn't there when it happened.
Well, it can be very uneventful.
Right.
I have, and it's just
Well,
they're like maybe shallow breathing, and then they're not.
That's
and
uneventful.
that's it.
No, that's something. That's the huge.
I mean,
event. It's the end
it's
of
not.
time for that person.
I don't know.
Earlier this last week, you asked me about. Do we throw pets and animals in this? We put our Yorkshire Terrier down, and we had an in-house vet come to do it in our house, and it was in our lap. He was in our lap when she gave him the first shot to kind of quiet him down, and then it was incredibly moving and sad and everything, but yet one of those beautiful experiences. And I'd say, that was a good experience, and yet touching, deep, still sad, but it's like if that's the way it's going to happen, that seemed like the best way it could, right?
Yeah.
So that I don't know where that fits in, but
and that sticks with you, right? I mean, you were talking about that last week.
Yeah.
We had a little dog that I always said went to its retirement home in the last few years of her life. She went to live with my mother-in-law because this dog just could not stand to be alone. And when my wife went back to work, after the boys had gone to school, this dog was just miserable being home alone for any stretch of time. So it was my mother-in-law who ended up being with that dog like when it passed away. And I always felt like kind of bad that, she was there for that moment and we weren't. For some reason, I felt bad about that. Because that was, my mother-in-law was crying, telling us about it.
It's moving.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a member of your family. It is.
Joshua Madrid, good morning to you too. And this is what I was talking about, and I totally agree with him. He says, I've never been the type that can stomach shows like Squid Game. The older I become, the more protective I get about what type of media I consume and how that media affects me. I just can't justify spending my precious free time sitting around and watching people get killed on my television. It doesn't sound healthy. Maybe you could call me a scaredy cat, and I'm totally okay with that. I so agree, Joshua. I mean, with the Real Housewives type of garbage that there is out there, and just people treating each other terribly, or like a documentary, I feel like, I don't know, is that different in some way than like watching like a scripted show? Like I got you started on The Jinx about Robert Durst. If you guys haven't seen it, it's on HBO, and it is amazingly well put together. And like there's one on Netflix about Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker in LA, that's so well done, and you're just like glued to every episode, and he was a serial killer.
Right.
And it's some of the highest rated programming out there.
I understand what that last viewer is saying, though, about the gratuitous violence and how it can be, or like even what's the Karate Kid redo that they had on Netflix, Cobra Kai.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the scenes that are so over the top ridiculous with the fighting, like in the school, and it bothers me, like thinking geez, are you kidding? Like all the hits to the face and the kicks to the throat and all this. They throw this
nobody
one kid,
could withstand this.
Yeah, they throw one kid off the second floor and he lands on his back on a balcony, on like a railing, and he ends up in the hospital.
Yeah.
And it was just terrible. I'm thinking like, this is way too much. But on the other hand, when I'm watching Die Hard, it's like at the end of the movie when when the cop pulls out his gun and blows away the bad guy.
I was just thinking of that scene the
it's
other
like
day.
I
I
never
don't
get
know
tired of
why.
seeing that. So I guess it's like, again, it goes
Well,
back
because he was a bad guy that got what he deserved, right?
If they're good, I don't want to see it. If they're bad, apparently I have no problem watching it.
All right, you guys, the Morbid curiosity test. You can Google it, take it yourself. Drew ranked higher than average. I was about right there. What was your
I don't know
final
what.
score?
I thought it was at an average. So that's why.
Yeah, you're about average. Yeah, you're about average with the rest of the nation.
I like the paranormal.
I don't know about this one, yeah. Okay. Bye, you guys. We'll see you tomorrow.